The glass slammed against the table. The entire dining room went silent. Under the pale golden light of crystal chandeliers in a luxurious Manhattan penthouse, Clara Whitmore shot to her feet. Her long blonde hair fell over her shoulders, and the beautiful 16-year-old's face hardened with anger. "No." Her voice cut through the room. "Get out." The young housekeeper beside the table froze. "Miss Clara, I was only trying to." "I said get out." Clara pointed toward the door. The woman's face went pale. The silverware on the tray in her trembling hands rattled against the china. At the other end of the room, Elias Whitmore said nothing. The middle-aged businessman stood in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, staring at his daughter with an exhaustion he could no longer hide. 6 housekeepers had quit in less than 2 weeks. 2 had left before sunrise. 1 had refused her final paycheck and walked out of the building without looking back. Every one of them had given Elias the same reason. Clara. He had tried everything. Rules. Punishments. Cutting off her allowance. Taking away her phone. Even sending her to a counselor. Nothing worked. Clara had become a wall covered in thorns. Anyone who came too close eventually got pushed away. But Clara's behavior wasn't what frightened Elias the most. It was Mara. His youngest daughter was barely over a year old. Ever since the girl's mother had disappeared from their lives, Clara had changed completely. She was no longer the cheerful girl who raced down the stairs every morning. There were no more breakfasts filled with laughter. No more evenings spent reading beside the window. She had become angry, guarded, and especially hostile toward any woman Elias hired to help care for Mara. It was almost as if Clara believed anyone who entered their home would eventually leave. The dining room door opened. A woman stepped inside. She was about 45 with deep brown skin, dark hair neatly pulled into a bun, and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything. She wore a simple navy housekeeper's uniform and practical black shoes. A worn canvas bag hung from one shoulder. No expensive jewelry. No nervous smile. No fear. Her name was Marisol Reyes, the new housekeeper. Clara looked her up and down. Another one? Elias sighed. Clara. But Marisol simply placed her bag beside the doorway. She looked directly at the teenager. She didn't lower her eyes. She didn't apologize for being there. Hello, Clara. Clara gave a cold laugh. You won't last. Marisol tilted her head slightly. Why not? Because nobody does. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Elias looked at his daughter. For the first time in days he saw something underneath her anger. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't hatred. It was fear. Marisol saw it too. She stepped a little closer. So you want me to leave? Yes. All right. Clara blinked. She hadn't expected that answer. But Marisol wasn't finished. If you truly want me gone, look me in the eye and tell me why. Clara said nothing. No yelling, Marisol continued. No throwing things. No slamming doors. Her voice remained perfectly calm. Tell me why I should leave. Clara stared at her. 1 second. 2. Then her confidence began to crack. Marisol lowered her voice. Or maybe you want me to leave before I get the chance to leave you. Elias slowly turned his head. Clara's expression changed instantly. You don't know anything about me. You're right. Marisol nodded. But I know what it's like to wait for someone who never comes back. Clara clenched her fists. Then she turned and walked quickly toward the staircase. But before she reached it, a baby's cry came from upstairs. Clara stopped immediately. Every trace of anger disappeared from her face. Nobody had to call her. Nobody had to tell her what to do. She ran upstairs. Marisol watched her disappear. Elias stood behind her. Now you understand the problem. Marisol remained silent for a moment. Then she looked toward the staircase. No, Mr. Whitmore. I think you're the one who doesn't understand it yet. When Marisol entered the nursery, Clara was already holding Mara. The 16-year-old sat in a rocking chair beside the window, gently cradling her baby sister against her chest. Mara was still whimpering, but the crying had softened. It's okay, Clara whispered. I'm here. It was the first time Marisol had heard tenderness in Clara's voice. She stayed by the doorway. Clara noticed. What are you staring at? Nothing, Marisol said. I'm trying to understand you. I don't need you to understand me. Maybe not. But she does. Clara immediately tightened her arms around her little sister. Don't touch her. Marisol stopped. Okay. That answer caught Clara off guard. Marisol didn't come any closer. Instead, she looked at the table beside the crib. A bottle had gone cold. 2 burp cloths lay unfolded beside it. A nearly empty can of formula sat near the bottle warmer. And underneath everything was a childcare schedule covered in crossed-out times and handwritten corrections. Marisol picked it up. Who made this schedule? The other housekeepers. Marisol studied it. This doesn't make sense. Clara looked at her. Marisol pointed to one of the entries. Mara woke up at 6:30, but this says she's supposed to eat at 7. If she's already been crying for 40 minutes, forcing a bottle on her now will only make her more upset. Clara went silent. That was exactly what she had been telling everyone. Nobody had listened. Marisol put the schedule down. You understand your sister. Of course I do. Then why do you keep driving away everyone who could help you? Clara stiffened. You're 16 years old, Marisol said. You can love Mara. You can protect her. But you cannot become her mother. Don't talk about my mother. Why? Because she left us. The words exploded out of Clara. Mara startled. Clara immediately lowered her voice. I'm sorry. She pulled her little sister closer. Marisol finally understood. Clara didn't hate the housekeepers. She was terrified Mara might grow attached to one of them, and then one day that person would disappear. Just like their mother. Marisol pulled a chair closer, but left enough space between them. I'm not going to promise I'll be here forever. Clara looked at her. See? But I can promise you something else. What? If the day ever comes when I have to leave, I'll tell you. Marisol held her gaze. I won't disappear. Clara said nothing. But this time she didn't tell Marisol to get out. Over the next several days, the Whitmore home began to change. Not because Clara suddenly became easy to deal with. She didn't. On the first morning, she complained about breakfast. On the second, she argued with Marisol for nearly 20 minutes. On the third, she slammed her bedroom door in Marisol's face. Marisol stayed. She also refused to surrender. 7:30, Marisol called through the bedroom door one morning. Breakfast. I'm not hungry. I didn't ask if you were hungry. I'm not coming downstairs. Fine. There was a pause. I'm taking Mara for a walk at 8. The bedroom door opened immediately. I'm coming. Marisol smiled. Then put on a coat. Clara frowned. She knew she'd been tricked. Strangely, she didn't mind as much as she thought she would. Little by little, Marisol created a new rhythm in the household. Mara ate on a consistent schedule. She slept at regular times. She was no longer passed from one unfamiliar person to another. Clara started attending school regularly again. And Elias began receiving an education of his own. One morning, he came downstairs to find Marisol waiting with a baby bottle. She held it out. Elias stared at it. What is that? Your daughter's breakfast. I have a meeting. And Mara has a father. Clara, sitting at the kitchen island with a bowl of cereal, nearly laughed. Elias looked at her. You find this funny? Clara immediately stared into her bowl. No. You're smiling. I'm absolutely not. Marisol folded her arms. Mr. Whitmore. Elias looked at the bottle, then at his watch. Finally, he sighed and took it. 10 minutes later, something happened that nobody in the Whitmore penthouse had ever expected to see. Elias Whitmore, a man who could control a boardroom full of executives with a single glance, sat helplessly on the couch with Mara in his arms. She won't drink. Clara spoke from behind him. You're holding the bottle wrong. Elias turned. Then you do it. Clara shook her head. No. Why not? Marisol says you need to learn. Elias slowly looked toward Marisol. She shrugged. She's right. For the first time in months, Clara laughed. A real laugh. Elias stared at his daughter. He couldn't remember the last time he had heard that sound. But Marisol soon discovered another problem. Clara had built her entire life around Mara. She refused invitations from friends. She had stopped participating in school clubs. She constantly checked the nursery camera from her phone. One evening, Marisol found Clara sitting beside Mara's crib long after the baby had fallen asleep. "You should be in bed." "I'm not tired." "You have a test tomorrow." Clara didn't respond. Marisol sat beside her. "You can't watch over her forever." "Yes, I can." "No." Clara turned toward her. "If I'm not here, who's going to make sure it doesn't happen again?" Marisol understood immediately. "Your mother." Clara looked down. "She said she'd come back." Her voice was barely audible. "The night she left, she said she'd only be gone for a few days." Marisol listened. "I waited every day," Clara continued. "Then a week passed. Then a month. Mara started crying every night. Dad was always busy. The housekeepers kept changing. So I thought, if I stayed with Mara all the time, at least she would never have to wait for someone the way I did." Marisol rested one hand on the crib. "What you've done for her is beautiful." Clara looked up. "But you're paying too high a price for it." "What do you mean?" "You're giving up being 16 to fix a decision made by an adult." Clara went silent. "That isn't your responsibility." "But Mara needs me." "Yes," Marisol said. "She needs her sister. Not another mother." Tears appeared in Clara's eyes. She quickly looked away. "I don't know how to stop." "Then we'll learn," Marisol said. "One step at a time." A few weeks later, Clara received an invitation to her school's winter formal. She was about to throw it away. Marisol took it from the trash. "You're going?" "No." "Yes." "What about Mara?" "She stays home." "With who?" Marisol pointed to herself. Clara remained suspicious. "And your father?" Clara laughed. "Then I'm definitely not going." That evening, Elias came home to find a sheet of paper attached to the refrigerator. Friday night schedule. 6 o'clock Mara eats dinner. 6:30 bath. 7 o'clock story. 7:30 bedtime. At the bottom, written in large letters, "Elias is responsible." He looked at Marisol. "You're joking." "No." Clara was standing on the stairs. "Dad can say no." Marisol turned toward her. "No, he can't." Elias looked at his daughter, then at Marisol. Finally, he loosened his tie. "What time do you need to leave?" Clara hesitated. 7. "I'll have the car ready at 6:30. Clara stared at him. Something inside her shifted. On Friday night, Clara wore a pale blue dress. When she came downstairs, Elias froze. Not because of the dress. For the first time in nearly a year, his daughter looked like a 16-year-old girl. Not a caretaker. Not Mara's protector. Just Clara. Elias walked toward her. "You look beautiful." Clara glanced down. "Thanks, Dad." Mara was in Marisol's arms. Clara kissed her little sister's forehead. "I'll come home early." Marisol shook her head. "No." Clara looked surprised. "No." "Come home on time." "Don't come home early." Clara looked at her, then smiled back. "Okay." The door closed behind her. Elias turned to Marisol. "Thank you." "Don't thank me." Marisol handed Mara to him. "Change your daughter's diaper." Elias's smile vanished. The greatest test came on a cold winter morning. An envelope arrived at the penthouse. There was no return address. Only one name. Clara Whitmore. Clara opened it. There was a letter inside. She read the first line. The color drained from her face. Marisol noticed. "What's wrong?" Clara didn't answer. Elias entered the room. The moment he saw the letter in his daughter's hand, he stopped. Clara looked at him. "You knew." Elias remained silent. "You knew about this?" "Clara. She wants to see me." Marisol understood. Their mother. The woman who had disappeared from the girls' lives. Clara dropped the letter onto the table. "She says she wants to see Mara too." "No," Elias answered immediately. "You don't get to decide that for me. I'm not letting her walk into this house and hurt you both again." Clara stared at him. "You already knew she'd contacted us?" Elias said nothing. His silence was enough. "How long?" "A few weeks." "You hid this from me?" "I was trying to protect you." Clara laughed bitterly. "That's exactly what I've been doing to Mara." Elias had no answer. Clara turned and ran upstairs. Her bedroom door slammed shut. This time Marisol didn't immediately follow her. She looked at Elias instead. You need to tell her the truth. I was protecting her. No, Marisol said. You're trying to control something because you're afraid of it. She glanced toward the stairs. And you've already seen what that did to Clara. An hour later, Elias knocked on his daughter's bedroom door. No answer. He entered anyway. Clara was sitting beside the window. I'm sorry. She didn't look at him. I thought if I hid the letter, the problem would disappear. Clara remained silent. But Marisol was right. Now Clara turned around. I'm afraid, Elias admitted quietly. I'm afraid your mother will come back, give you both hope and then leave again. Clara looked at him. I'm afraid too. I know. No. Clara shook her head. Now you know. Elias sat beside her. Then we'll decide together. Decide what? Whether you want to see your mother. Clara looked out the window. After a long silence she spoke. I want to see her. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. Okay. But not Mara. Clara looked at him. I'll meet her first. This time Elias didn't argue. Okay. The meeting took place in a small cafe on the Upper West Side. Marisol sat at a table across the room. Elias waited outside. Clara sat alone across from the woman who had abandoned her nearly a year earlier. Her mother looked different. More tired. Older. Clara. Her voice trembled. You've grown so much. Clara didn't smile. What do you want? Her mother lowered her eyes. I want to apologize. An apology doesn't erase the last year. I know. No, Clara said. You don't know. Her voice began to shake. You don't know what it was like hearing Mara cry every night. You don't know what it was like wondering if the next person who walked into our house would leave too. You don't know how hard I tried to keep everything together. Her mother began to cry. Clara continued. I thought if I became strong enough, nobody could ever abandon me again. Then she looked across the cafe toward Marisol. But I was wrong. Marisol said nothing. She only gave Clara a small nod. Clara turned back to her mother. I'm not ready for you to see Mara. Her mother wiped away her tears. When will you be ready? I don't know. Clara stood. But this time I get to decide. She walked away from the table. And for the first time in her life, Clara left someone without feeling like she was the one being abandoned. The days that followed were quieter, but they were not magically easy. Clara still thought about the meeting. Sometimes she woke in the middle of the night and checked on Mara. Sometimes she found herself staring at the front door as though expecting another envelope. But now she talked about it. Sometimes with Elias. More often with Marisol. She began to understand that healing did not mean forgetting what happened or pretending it had never hurt. It meant allowing herself to live without organizing every hour around the fear that someone might leave. Elias changed too. He stopped treating fatherhood like another responsibility he could delegate. He learned Mara's routines, learned which story made her sleepy, learned how she liked to be held when she was tired, and learned that some meetings could wait. Clara noticed every small change. She no longer felt that Mara's entire world would collapse if she stepped outside the penthouse. She returned to school clubs. She spent more time with friends. She studied without keeping the nursery camera open beside her books. The first time she went several hours without checking it, she didn't even notice until Marisol pointed it out. You're getting better at this, Marisol said. Clara frowned. At what? Living your own life. Clara tried not to smile, but she did. Spring came to Manhattan. Sunlight poured through the penthouse windows. Mara was learning to walk. Elias sat on the floor with his arms stretched toward her. Come on. Mara took one shaky step. Then another. Clara sat across the room with a textbook in her lap. Come on, Mara. The baby took another step, then fell into her father's arms. Elias laughed. Clara laughed too. Marisol watched from the kitchen doorway, then quietly removed her apron. Clara immediately noticed. What are you doing? My shift is over. Where are you going? Marisol looked at her. For one brief second, panic returned to Clara's eyes. But this time she didn't yell. She didn't get angry. She didn't block the door. Marisol smiled. Home. Are you coming back tomorrow? 7 o'clock in the morning. Clara watched her for a few seconds, then nodded. Okay. Marisol picked up her bag. Before leaving, she turned around. Clara. Yeah. You just did it. Did what? You let someone leave while still believing they could come back. Clara stood quietly. Then she looked at Mara laughing in their father's arms. She looked at Elias. And finally, she looked around the home that had once felt like a cage. A smile slowly appeared on her face. See you tomorrow. Marisol opened the door. See you tomorrow. The door closed. Nothing shattered. Nobody screamed. Nobody ran after her. There was only Mara's laughter filling the sunlit room. Clara walked toward her father. Mara immediately reached for her big sister. Clara lifted her into her arms. But this time, she didn't hold Mara as though loosening her grip might make the entire world disappear. She simply held her like a sister. Elias rested a hand on Clara's shoulder. You okay? Clara looked toward the door Marisol had just walked through. Then she looked at Mara. Yeah. She paused. I think I am. Outside the windows, Manhattan continued moving as it always had. Cars, people, arrivals, departures. And Clara finally understood what had taken her nearly a year to learn. Loving someone doesn't mean holding them so tightly that they can never leave. Sometimes love means trusting them enough to open the door, to let them walk away, and still believe that tomorrow they'll come back.